Witnesses are in person. Members have the option to appear both in person or virtually. For those joining remotely, the reminders we give every hearing, there'll be a slight delay before you're displayed on the screen. To minimize background noise, please click the mute button until it's your turn to speak. You know of the 30 seconds on the clock. Technology issue will move to the next member if there's a problem. Speaking order will be as usual, that is by seniority of the members who have checked in before the gavel came down, either in person or virtually, and then by seniority of members arriving later, and we alternate, as you know, from Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. First, I'd like to, before addressing the four of you, and again, thank you for your willingness to serve, I'd like to say a word about our committee and our tolerance for character assassination. Until yesterday, I thought we all recognized that McCarthyism has no place in our democratic society. Any American citizen who fled communist repression, whether FDIC Chair Alana McCargo or OCC nominee Saule Omarova, should be lauded for her courage and her conviction. Anyone who hears Professor Omarova's story of life in the Soviet Union, her family's banishment to Siberia, and other stories will understand how offensive the attacks on her character are. I have faith that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will reject this modern day Red Scare these modern day Red Scare tactics. Committee meets today to consider the nominations of Matthew Axelrod to be Assistant Secretary for Export Enforcement at Department of Commerce, Alana McCargo to be President for the Government National Mortgage Association, Jenny May, James Arthur Jemison the second to be Assistant Secretary for Public and Indian Housing at HUD, and Mark Colon to be Assistant Secretary for Community Planning and Development at HUD. Thank you again, all four of you, for joining us and for your willingness to serve our country. We congratulate you. We welcome your families and friends. If confirmed, the nominees before us today would play a significant role in protecting U.S. national security interests, expanding housing opportunities for millions of Americans, supporting families searching for a safe and affordable place to live. All important functions of this committee, this Senate, and this country's government. As Assistant Secretary for Export Enforcement, Mr. Axelrod would be responsible for leading a division within the Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security that detects, investigates, and deters illegal behavior. As President of the Government National Mortgage Association, Jenny May, Ms. McCargo would play a significant role in expanding funding for mortgages and making homeownership a reality for millions of Americans across the country, including in my state of Ohio, of course. And as the Assistant Secretary for Public and Indian Housing, Mr. Jemison would be responsible for leading an office dedicated to ensuring vulnerable families across the country have a decent place to call home. Finally, an Assistant Secretary for Community Planning and Development, Mr. Colon, would be responsible for leading an office working to support communities in all our states. All four nominees appearing today are highly qualified. Mr. Axelrod has a distinguished record of service as a government prosecutor, currently detailed to the Office of the White House Counsel from the Department of Justice. Before that, Mr. Axelrod served in several roles at DOJ, working to protect our national security, working on criminal prosecutions. Welcome, Mr. Axelrod, to the committee. Alana McCargo currently serves as Senior Advisor for Housing Finance at HUD. Prior to joining the Biden administration, she served as Vice President for the Housing Finance Policy Center at the Urban Institute, where she focused on reducing the racial homeownership gap and making housing more affordable. She has 10 years experience at Fannie Mae, including during the last financial crisis. We're glad to have you two here today, Ms. McCargo. Mr. Jemison currently serves as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Community Planning and Development of HUD. At HUD, prior to joining the Biden administration, he held numerous positions for the city of Detroit, most recently leading the city's development agenda. He also served the public in Massachusetts and in the District of Columbia, working on issues related to creating vibrant, growing, affordable communities. Welcome, Mr. Jemison. We're glad you're in front of us today. Our other fourth nominee is Mark Colon. He serves as president of the Office of Housing Preservation at New York State Homes and Community Renewal. Various roles at that agency, Mr. Colon has served the people of New York, working to build and protect affordable housing and helping families, especially families, recover from Superstorm Sandy. Welcome, Mr. Colon. We're grateful to the nominees for appearing today, for your willingness to serve the American people. Look forward to your testimonies. Senator Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since you brought up the issue that you describe as Red Scare tactics, let me respond. What's shocking to me is the notion that a person nominated for a very high position in our government shouldn't be accountable for the things that they have advocated for in writing themselves. Every one of my criticisms of Ms. Omarova are rooted directly in things that she has said and written, mostly quite recently, and which she has characterized herself as radical ideas. I agree that they are radical, and they are dangerous, and they would be enormously harmful to our economy, and that's exactly what I pointed out in my comments on the Senate floor. I also pointed out that some of the most wonderful, loyal, and greatest Americans that I've ever met are Americans who happen to have been born and raised behind the Iron Curtain and come to this country. That fact of her background has no bearing whatsoever on my judgment about how profoundly misguided the policies she has advocated are, and it is perfectly appropriate for us to examine those policies. As for this morning's hearing, I want to welcome our nominees. Mr. Axelrod has been nominated to serve as Assistant Secretary for Export Enforcement in the Commerce's Department Bureau of Industry and Security, or BIS. BIS, of course, determines which U.S. goods are too sensitive to be shipped abroad. In the face of China's drive for dominance in key tech sectors, BIS's mission today is as important as it's ever been. But export controls are only as good as their enforcement. Mr. Axelrod would have the important job of overseeing that enforcement. I expect and I look forward to him giving his own answers to questions from this committee, including questions for the record, and I mention that because some BIS nominees have not done that in the recent past. Today's other nominees would, if confirmed, fill key leadership positions at HUD. In response to COVID, Congress appropriated billions of dollars for HUD programs, in addition to the billions we normally provide for them. In March, the Democrats' partisan spending bill sent billions more to HUD. Now Democrats are trying to use this reckless tax and spend reconciliation bill to provide more than $300 billion in addition to HUD. And unfortunately, based on their records, I'm not certain that all of today's nominees are well suited to be good stewards of those tax dollars. Ms. McCargo has been nominated to serve as the president of Ginnie Mae. After the 2008 financial crisis, she was responsible at Fannie Mae for implementing the Home Affordable Modification Program, or HAMP, which was intended to help borrowers avoid foreclosure. HAMP was beset with challenges. A special inspector general found that a significant share of borrowers in HAMP, and people who had already defaulted because they couldn't afford their initial mortgage, received loan modifications and then defaulted again. And GAO found inconsistencies in how loan servicers interfaced with borrowers, which GAO claimed could lead to inequitable treatment. Fast forward to today, Ginnie Mae recently rolled out a proposal to help borrowers by transitioning them from COVID-related mortgage forbearance into loan modifications for up to 40 years. Ms. McCargo has endorsed this idea. If confirmed, Ms. McCargo will need to be vigilant to ensure that the challenges that HAMP faced do not reappear for borrowers and taxpayers with this latest taxpayer-backed plan to subsidize certain people's mortgages. Mr. Jemison has been nominated to serve as the Assistant Secretary responsible for public housing and Indian housing. For almost 7 years, he worked on housing issues for Detroit, a city so chronically mismanaged that it had to file for bankruptcy in 2013. Mr. Jemison contributed to the leadership of Detroit, and that leadership often failed to revitalize blighted homes and neighborhoods on time and as promised. Amazingly, city officials admitted that they set aggressive construction timelines without any data to support them. Mr. Jemison's track record in Detroit is concerning because Democrats in the White House want to spend $80 billion more on public housing in this reckless spending bill that they're contemplating. If confirmed, Mr. Jemison would lead HUD's public housing office, which would be directly responsible for this enormous amount of money. Our last nominee today, Mr. Colon, has a particularly concerning record. He's had senior management roles at New York housing agencies that have been rife with problems, from project delays to ignoring ever-increasing tenant complaints, according to independent auditors. These failures, which occurred under Mr. Colon's watch, give me little confidence that he would be a good steward of taxpayer dollars at HUD. But there's something even more troubling about Mr. Colon's record, and that is his history of using Twitter to engage in vitriolic and profane attacks on his political opponents. Over the years, he's repeatedly mocked and attacked by name our Senate colleagues. He's ridiculed Senator Manchin. He referred to Senator Collins and other Republicans as clowns. Senator Graham he referred to as Senator Snagglepuss and hashtag Senator Shameless. Senator Rubio as Senator Jellyfish. Senator Paul as Spineless. Senator McConnell as Massacre Mitch and Moscow Mitch. He's also endorsed the slanderous claim that Republican senators, including members of this committee, were Russian stooges for having traveled to Russia on a Codell. And he's gone on profanity-laced tirades about President Trump. This is just a small selection. Unfortunately, we don't know the full extent of Mr. Cologne's statements because he's deleted some of them shortly before being nominated. I asked him to try to recover his deleted tweets from Twitter, but he refused to comply with this very reasonable request. And of course, it makes you wonder, what does he have to hide? The statements we do have from Mr. Cologne are more than sufficient to demonstrate that he lacks the judgment and temperament to serve in a senior leadership position at HUD. Frankly, I'm disappointed that the Biden administration did not withdraw his nomination months ago after these statements were uncovered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Toomey. Will each of you rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Do you agree to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of the U.S. Senate? Thank you. Mr. Axelrod, and all of you, if you feel free, certainly in your testimony, to introduce family members or friends, whether they're sitting behind you or you want to call them out. They're watching at home. Presumably they're watching from home. So, Mr. Axelrod, please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Brown, Ranking Member Toomey, and distinguished members of the committee, I am honored to be here today as President Biden's nominee to become the Assistant Secretary for Export Enforcement at the Department of Commerce. I want to thank the President and Secretary Raimondo for my nomination to this important enforcement and national security position at this critical time. I also want to thank my family, both those in the hearing room with me today, my wife Jamie and my daughter Sophie, who's missing her high school American government class, but getting a firsthand look here today, as well as those watching intently on their computer screens at home in Massachusetts and in Florida. Sophie's older sister Emily, my parents Carl and Andrea Axelrod, and my in-laws John and Margie Sussman. No one does these jobs alone. It is only through my family's collective love, support, and belief in the importance of government service that I am able to appear before you today as a presidential nominee. In recent years, the export enforcement work of the Department of Commerce has become an increasingly pivotal component of our country's national security efforts. It is essential that our adversaries do not gain access to dual-use goods and technologies that they can then put to malign purposes like terrorism, WMD proliferation, and human rights abuses. If confirmed, I believe that my deep criminal and national security enforcement experience will allow me to effectively lead the dedicated agents and analysts of BIS in meeting this national security imperative. As a career federal prosecutor in Miami, I was part of one of the nation's busiest U.S. attorney's offices. Given Miami's role in international commerce, both licit and illicit, our work often had international dimensions. My cases included ones against the two founders and highest-ranking members of the Cali cartel, and against a husband and wife team who were spying for the Cuban intelligence service. In all my cases as a prosecutor, both those with international angles and those that were purely domestic, I worked alongside federal law enforcement agents. I was and remain in awe of all they do to help keep the American people safe. After 6 years in Miami, I became a career detailee to DOJ headquarters here in Washington, where I worked as a senior counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division, and then as an Associate Deputy Attorney General responsible for overseeing the criminal enforcement work of the department. I also later served as the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, where I worked with the department's senior leaders on the most significant national security and criminal enforcement matters at the department. During my time at Maine Justice, I also worked closely with the career prosecutors in the National Security Division, with federal law enforcement agencies, and with interagency partners to protect the country's national security. I am confident that the relationships I formed and the knowledge I gained about the importance of bringing a whole-of-government approach to combat national security threats will serve me well if confirmed. While I come from an enforcement background, that's not the entirety of my professional experience. I spent much of the past 4 years in an international law firm where my work took me around the globe, from Europe to Asia to Africa. No matter where I was in the world, people wanted to hear about United States enforcement mechanisms. It was our enforcement regimes they wanted to make sure they did not run afoul of. That experience gave me an important perspective on how best to maximize the impact of our export enforcement work. We must impose significant penalties against those who break the law, while at the same time incentivizing companies to play by the rules. That way, we not only punish export violators, but also deter those violations from occurring in the first place. I mentioned that my daughter Sophie is missing her high school government class to be here today. Back when I was in high school, my classmates and I were consistently told that from those to whom much has been given, much will be expected. I'm filled with gratitude beyond measure for what I've been given over the years by my family, my friends, and my professional colleagues. I know that means that much will continue to be expected of me in return. If confirmed, it would be my great honor to endeavor to fulfill those expectations as the Assistant Secretary for Export Enforcement. Thank you again for considering my nomination, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Axelrod. Ms. McCargo, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Brown, Ranking Member Toomey, and members of the committee. It's an honor to appear before you as you consider my nomination to serve as the next president of the Government National Mortgage Association, or Ginnie Mae. I am grateful to President Biden for nominating me, and thank Secretary Fudge for her leadership and vision for the Department of Housing and Urban Development and entrusting me to lead Ginnie Mae. The historic significance of being the first woman nominated to this role since Ginnie Mae was created in 1968 is a distinct honor. My husband, Jay McCargo, and my daughter, Alexandra, are both here with me today. I thank them for being a loving source of inspiration, encouragement, and support. I want to thank my family members and friends watching virtually and acknowledge my mother, Veronica Malvo Brown, who has been my wise and faithful guide through my life. I would also like to thank my amazing sons, Jared and JJ. Nearly 20 years ago, I came to Washington, D.C. to work on affordable housing programs at Fannie Mae. I spent a decade there, including the years of the global financial crisis in 2008, which led to a U.S. housing market meltdown that ultimately left tens of millions of people without homes and with lost wealth. Those years became an inflection point for me. I learned how fragile the system is and that supported housing and homeownership in America, and how quickly things could change. I saw the devastating effects that rippled across neighborhoods and households. It was heart-wrenching to see so many people in financial distress and despair, and disheartening to find that many who were losing their homes to foreclosure and eviction during that time looked like me and my children. That experience changed my perspective and helped sharpen my purpose. Stable, affordable, and accessible housing has since been at the core of my professional work in the private sector, in the nonprofit policy research work that I led at the Urban Institute, and now in my public sector work with the Biden-Harris administration at HUD. My career in housing finance and passion for the field of affordable housing is driven by my own lived experience. I understand how powerful asset building and access to credit and financing are to personal financial security. Property and homeownership have been vital to my own family for generations, and I recognize that my personal story is often not typical for a Black family. My mother grew up on a farm that my grandfather owned in a small town near Opelousas, Louisiana, where she picked cotton and canned and farmed vegetables. Our family roots of property ownership are deep and have created a value system through generations of Black farm and landowners in my lineage. My father was an immigrant from Jamaica who came to New York and became a U.S. citizen as a child and joined the Navy after high school. In 1969, just 1 year after the Fair Housing Act was passed and racial discrimination in housing became illegal, my parents purchased a 4-unit home in a highly segregated area of the Bronx for $30,000 with some savings and a small VA mortgage loan. We lived in one of the apartments and rented out the others. My parents later bought a home in New York State in the suburbs in search for better schools and a safer neighborhood, and kept the house in the Bronx as a source of extra rental income. My parents built a strong foundation for our family through homeownership. They were able to pass those benefits on to me and my siblings in the form of college tuition payments, helping us avoid student loan debt. They helped me with a gift to purchase my first home, which I was able to finance with a low-down payment FHA mortgage. Far too many people do not get the opportunity to plant seeds of ownership because housing is grossly unaffordable, it's impossible to save, or they lack resources or don't have parents who can help them get started. Government mortgage programs help enable homeownership opportunity. Ginnie Mae's guarantee enables the work of key government housing programs that play an essential role in housing America's veterans, low and moderate income households, urban, rural, and tribal communities, and helps expand access to affordable homeownership and rental for the historically and systematically underserved. In 2020, more than 70% of all people served by Ginnie Mae securities were first-time homebuyers. Ginnie Mae has remained stable and reliable while quietly supporting affordable rental and homeownership for millions of people. If confirmed, I will be a faithful steward of Ginnie Mae, ensuring the program stays focused on its critical mission, keeps pace with the rapidly changing market, attracts global capital into America's housing finance system, and protects American taxpayers. I look forward to leading an incredibly dedicated team of public servants at Ginnie Mae and to working with this committee, Secretary Fudge, and housing stakeholders across the globe to ensure stability, liquidity, affordability, and equity in our housing finance system. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. McCargo. Mr. Jemison, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Welcome.
Good morning. Chairman Brown, Ranking Member Toomey, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today as the nominee for Assistant Secretary for Public and Indian Housing in the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I want to thank President Biden for nominating me and Secretary Fudge for her support of my candidacy. I'd also like to thank my family and friends for their love, support, and guidance. I'm grateful to my father, James, and particularly my mother, Beverly, and my sister, Jamila, who has joined me here today, for their guidance and support. Finally, I want to thank my wife, Annie. She's been a partner to me, our 3 children, and the family for the last 20 years. HUD's Office of Public and Indian Housing funds the operation and capital that supports 3.2 million American families every night. Public housing is at the center of many American neighborhoods, and PIH rental assistance supports many American households and landlords. Indian Housing Block Grant supports many thousands of families and elders in tribal communities every day. I'm excited to work with the professionals who've maintained and supported these capital assets and voucher resources since 1938. I spent the last 25 years working in city planning and development, first as part of a team and later leading the development and preservation of market rate and affordable housing units, as well as the parks, streets, transportation facilities, commercial districts, downtowns, and employment centers that bring those communities together. I've done this by bringing together the feasibility planning, design, permitting, and financing concepts, private, public, and philanthropic, required to execute these strategies. Bringing expertise together with community engagement, I've performed this work in downtowns and neighborhoods and small towns. Specifically, I've experience in 3 great American cities, Boston, Washington, D.C., and Detroit, Michigan, as well as the smaller cities and towns of Massachusetts. As part of partnerships with developers, community leaders, funders, boards, and commissions, my work has resulted in preservation of more than 4,000 affordable units and over 3,500 new market and affordable housing units, including hundreds of public housing units. For the last 9 months, I've had the opportunity to lead HUD's Community Planning and Development Office as the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary. I appreciate the partnership CPD staff members and leaders have extended to me. However, today I'm particularly honored to be nominated to be the steward of this institution because I grew up in public housing. From 1983 to 1988, I lived at 693 Main Street in Amherst, Massachusetts. It was a newly built housing unit operated by the Amherst Housing Authority. Amherst is what would be described as an area of high opportunity. It's a college town surrounded by 5 colleges and farming communities. However, this housing opportunity stabilized my family at a critical time and made a difference in my life, the difference that it makes, that affordable housing makes for so many Americans every night. Making it work for more Americans has been my mission ever since I left that unit for college, for a summer program that caused me to be interested in planning and development, and later to become a graduate student in city planning. It's also the place that my sister, who's here with me today, left to go to medical school. I know that well-designed and well-maintained public housing and rental assistance can work as part of the American safety net. I know this personally because I've lived it. I know it professionally because I've had affordable housing at the center of every major effort I've been involved in since I began my career. I've spent my entire career collaborating to create better places for every kind of American, where every kind of American can live together. Public housing is central to this mission. If confirmed, I'll use all my energy and experience working to transform public housing, ensure that vouchers stabilize households and end homelessness, and support the strength of tribal communities across America. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jemison. Mr. Colon, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Brown, Ranking Member Toomey, and distinguished members of the committee. I am deeply honored to appear before you today as a nominee for Assistant Secretary for Community Planning and Development at HUD. I would like to start by thanking President Biden for his trust and confidence in nominating me. I would also like to thank the committee for allowing me this time and for considering my nomination. I must also thank my family, friends, and colleagues for their unwavering support, and to recognize my beautiful, talented wife, Gina Kim, my brother-in-law, Reverend Ryan Kim, senior pastor of the Korean Presbyterian Church of Baltimore, and my cousin, Anthony Salemi, recently retired from serving 38 years with the U.S. Department of Defense, for being here to support me today. HUD's Assistant Secretary of CPD oversees many of the department's most critical grant programs. If confirmed, I will bring nearly 20 years of relevant public and private sector experience to help advance HUD's mission and to support the constituents who rely on these programs in your states. But I'd like to start by explaining my motivation for seeking this role. I've experienced firsthand the debilitating effects that substandard housing and limited economic opportunity can have on a family. My own family lost our home when I was 12 years old, and we moved into one of the few unregulated rentals in the area. I was one of 4 siblings raised by a single mother in a small working-class town in upstate New York. Our family was easily among the poorest, and we wound up with 5 people living in an 800-square-foot, 2-bedroom apartment. After my mom passed away when I was 20, I worked full-time to put myself through college, first at Westchester Community, then at CUNY Hunter College. I later earned a law degree from Yale University and spent 6 years working for some of the most prestigious private law firms in the world. Ultimately, however, I decided that public service was my calling, and I spent the past 13 years overseeing statewide programs for New York's combined housing and community development agencies. My life's experience has given me a unique perspective on the issues faced by most Americans, whether they're working class, economically struggling, or solidly middle class. I understand intimately the difference that well-run government programs can make, both as a participant and as a program administrator. This motivates me every single day to find ways to improve government programs so that more Americans from modest circumstances can access greater opportunities and a safe, decent place to call home. I also believe that my professional background is uniquely aligned with CPD's mission of developing viable communities through partnerships focused on expanding opportunity for those most in need. For instance, I have overseen one of the largest, most diverse affordable housing portfolios in the country, with more than 450,000 units stretching from the eastern tip of Long Island to the rural North Country bordering on Canada. I have also served as my agency's acting disaster recovery counsel, helping to lead New York's post-Sandy and post-Irene recovery efforts by designing policies for the award of billions of dollars in federal, state, and local funding. I have also served with nonprofit organizations that spearheaded disaster recovery efforts. For instance, after Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico in 2015, I helped lead a collaborative effort to purchase, import, and distribute island-wide more than 12,000 solar lanterns equipped with emergency radios and phone chargers, nearly all delivered within weeks of the hurricane's landfall. In short, I have worked with a range of organizations and officials of all political persuasions in every corner of the state and beyond. I have compiled a record of providing efficient and equitable resources to people in need, where and when they need them. And I believe that those Americans most in need of these programs would benefit greatly from someone who shares their experience, can empathize with their struggles, and has a proven track record of getting things done. Finally, I recognize the important role that this committee plays in overseeing the department's work. If confirmed, I commit to work in a bipartisan manner and to be responsive to the needs of every senator and their constituents, working to ensure that they have access to affordable housing and every opportunity to realize the American dream. Thank you once again for your time and this opportunity, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Colon. Thank you all. We, as you know, we operate around here in 5-minute blocks of time, and I want to ask a question of each of the four of you. So be as brief, thorough certainly, but be as brief as you can in answering the questions. And I will ask each of you one question. Mr. Axelrod, we got a letter signed by former DOJ political appointees and Democratic and Republican administrations supporting your nomination, as you know. As an assistant U.S. attorney, you prosecuted 2 of the founding members of the Cali cartel that you mentioned. How has your previous experience in enforcement and national security prepared you for this role?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Export enforcement hasn't had a Senate-confirmed head in over 5 years, and it's been even longer than that. Than they've had a former federal prosecutor like me. I believe my past work at the intersection of criminal enforcement and national security would enable me to lead the agents and analysts of BIS effectively and with credibility, and focused clearly on our most pressing threats. And I'm confident that my established relationships within federal law enforcement, if I were confirmed, they'd allow me to help build partnerships and raise the profile of export enforcement, which in turn could help to increase deterrence and incentivize compliance.
Thank you. Ms. McCargo, you saw the effects of the last financial crisis firsthand at Ginnie Mae and talked about the personal, the impact it had on you personally that way. What do we need to do? What will you do at Ginnie Mae to make sure we do not have any avoidable foreclosures in the future?
Thank you for the question, Senator Brown. The last foreclosure crisis did devastate millions of families, and we are coming out of a pandemic that has millions of families still in housing insecure positions. Currently, many of those coming out of forbearance programs that were put in place. This is something that I know all of government has been focused on in terms of the interagency housing work groups with FHA, VA, USDA, and Indian Housing, working together to put strategies in place to help homeowners that are coming out of forbearances keep their homes. And Ginnie Mae has been a part of that work, and I believe that if confirmed, I would continue to work with Ginnie Mae and the teams in the interagency working group to ensure that those families find security and have a healthy recovery from this crisis.
Thank you, Mr. Jemison. You've had extensive experience in housing, community development programs, state and local level, how important that is in this job. Tell us why investing in preserving and improving public housing is so important to you.
Thank you, Senator, Thank you, Senator, for the chance to answer this question. It's essential because so many American lives could be stabilized in this way. Preserving and creating new affordable housing, as I've shared before, makes a huge difference in people's lives. We have a chance to revitalize it in a way that's going to help us fight the impacts of climate change, and it's going to be it can be designed in a way that that allows American families to really reach their greatest potential. So for that reason, I think it's absolutely essential to invest now, and it's been a part of the practice I've used over the last 25 years.
Thank you, Mr. Colon. Your personal story was moving, I think, to all of us. Thank you for that. You've had extensive experience in housing and community development, including development of affordable housing and helping your community recover from Superstorm Sandy. You would oversee critical affordable housing community development, if confirmed, homelessness and disaster recovery programs. Talk about the importance of investing in sustainable, affordable housing in communities.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I can talk for quite a while on how important these investments are, but to get to the most quickest answer, In my own personal and professional experience, these investments work. I can give a quick example. Oh, thank you. I give two quick examples. One is rural rental assistance program that the New York State runs. It mimics the federal Section 8 voucher program for USDA Section 515 projects in rural areas. We increased the number of those by about 100 a couple of years ago out of 5,000 total. And I can tell you the number of messages, emails that we got thanking us for doing that and telling us how it changed their lives. One woman talked about it allowing her to buy Christmas presents, that extra subsidy money. So as I mentioned, these programs work and they change lives and they're critically important to the constituents, I believe, in all of your states.
Thank you, Mr. Colon. Senator Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Colon, as part of the confirmation process, the Senate, of course, reviews nominees' past public statements. As you know, they help provide a complete picture of nominees' policy views, judgment, and temperament. A nominee shouldn't be able to avoid scrutiny by merely clicking a button marked delete, but unfortunately, that appears to be what you have tried to do. You deleted multiple tweets, including some with profane attacks on Republicans. Now, we recovered some through an Internet Archive website, but that website is not comprehensive. And so on June 9th, I sent you a letter asking you to request that Twitter try to recover your deleted tweets. My staff followed up with you, but you've refused to comply. So, Mr. Colon, my question is, why do you think it's okay to ignore a reasonable request for information from the ranking member of the committee with jurisdiction over HUD and your nomination?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'd like to start by stating I am deeply and genuinely sorry for my prior personal tweets. To be clear, I began to delete those tweets prior to the election and long before my nomination. It was an approach that was out of character with my professional, everything in my professional and personal life. But just to be perfectly clear, that's by way of explanation. It's not an excuse, Senator. Posting these tweets was wrong. I take full responsibility for my actions. I have apologized on the record and publicly.
My question is, why did you not respond to my letter and that request that you retrieve those that were deleted?
Thank you, Senator. It's my understanding that you may have received a letter last night in response to your letter.
Last night. I sent you the letter on June 9th. You send me a letter. This is the first time hearing of it, the night before the hearing. Did you include all the tweets that you had deleted?
Thank you for the question, Senator. As I mentioned before, I began to delete any personal tweets long before my nomination. I've apologized publicly.
It wasn't terribly long before because some of the tweets are fairly recent. I mean, in January 21st of 2020, you were tweeting about the impeachment. You replied to a tweet about Senator Collins saying, "It really seems like we're reliving the 8th grade with these clowns, doesn't it?" You included a meme of Pee Wee Herman. Do you think Senator Collins is a clown?
Thank you, Senator. No, I do not. I am deeply and genuinely sorry for those tweets. They were out of character with everything that
you say they're out of character, but there were many that we discovered that were not deleted. Then we found some through this archive. You, in October of 2019, seemed to agree with a characterization of Americans who voted for Donald Trump as deplorables. I would point out that almost half of Americans did vote for President Trump, half of the voters, and some of them work at HUD. Let me bring your attention to one in particular because it suggests a disturbing disregard for the law. On September 12, 2019, you retweeted a tweet from another Twitter user who posted a video and tweeted, quote, "This hero stopped 2 undocumented immigrants who were passengers in his car from being arrested by ICE. In response, you wrote, and I quote, I think we have the tweet here, "This Brian McCormick guy is so GD #badass to stand his ground against 2 ICE officers on behalf of 2 others. I'm in awe of his resolve. #heroic resolve. #BAMF. All right, this isn't profane insults, but it suggests that you're celebrating a person who's interfering with the federal government's lawful apprehension of people who enter this country illegally. Is that your position?
Thank you, Senator. It is not my position. As I mentioned before, I have deleted the tweets, as many as I found, long before my nomination. Once this became an issue, rather than continue to delete the remainder of those tweets and have my motivations be questions, I decided to come here to the committee.
But then do you acknowledge that it is actually against the law to interfere with a law enforcement officer's attempt to perform a lawful arrest?
Thank you, Senator. I would have. I guess I'm in the general sense. I would have to agree.
Right. And it appears in your tweet that you were celebrating someone who did exactly that unlawful act. This is so it goes beyond the profane insults. It suggests a disregard for the law, at least in this regard. And who knows what the content is of those that you've chosen not to provide for us. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm running out of time. I do want to point out I have some concerns about Mr. Jemison's history in Detroit, Ms. McCargo's tenure at Fannie Mae. I'm going to send specific questions for the record to our nominees, and I expect that these nominees, not HUD staff, will actually answer the questions, unlike some other nominees that have come before this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Menendez from New Jersey is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm glad to see that our colleagues have found the Twitter app after years of being unable to find former President Trump's inflammatory tweets. I don't know when tweets became disqualifying for nominees, because they were certainly not a disqualifier for my colleagues on the other side of the aisle when I was the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where I saw a number of nominees put forward by the last administration that would clearly not meet my colleagues' new and rigorous standard. For example, one individual nominated twice by President Trump retweeted offensive and baseless claims about Republican senators that I won't repeat here, including promoting fringe conspiracy theories about their families. One actually disregarded the committee's request, but Republican senators voted for that person. Another one committed IRS fraud and was potentially under investigation. I brought that to everybody's attention. Republican senators voted for him. He subsequently was indicted. So this goes far beyond anything that the nominees before us have said, and I don't recall our colleagues speaking up in righteous anger, let alone sending letters against the last administration's nominees. So I don't think we should be pretending to hold these nominees before us to a different standard than those that Republican senators voted for in the last administration. But there is a fundamental difference between those nominees and these. These nominees are qualified for their job. I have to say, Mr. Colon brings years of experience and dedication to HUD, if she were to be confirmed. Not only did he work on Sandy recovery, which as a New Jerseyan, this is very important to me, but he currently oversees 450,000 affordable housing units. And Mr. Colon embodies the type of nominee we would like to see more of: highly qualified, experienced, and, by the way, representatives of the communities that they serve. So I'm happy to see he's been nominated to HUD, and I would hope the Biden administration follows through with more Latino nominations for this and every other agency. With that, let me turn to my questions. Mr. Colon, we're nearly 9 years since Hurricane Sandy, which devastated New Jersey, New York, and the Northeast. What followed after the deadly natural disaster was a man-made disaster caused by a maze of FEMA, SBA, and HUD programs. After fighting in Congress to secure billions in CDBG-DR funding, my constituents used that aid to rebuild their homes and follow the rules in good faith. 9 years later, HUD is attempting to claw back from New Jerseyans the money they used to repair their homes and get back on their feet. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. So my question to you is, if you are confirmed, will you commit to working with my office to provide relief for Sandy survivors so that New Jerseyans who tried to follow the rules are not faced with unfair clawbacks?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I am always open to legitimate solutions that will help families to better recover from natural disasters. If confirmed, I would be open to further discussing this issue with your office.
Okay, well, I hope that that leads to a more conclusive answer. If people followed the rules as they existed at the time, weren't told that you were going to get a HUD loan and an SBA loan and that therefore there was duplicitous, but you weren't told that at the beginning, it is unfair to then subsequently tell them, oh, sorry, you shouldn't have done that, but you didn't tell them you shouldn't do that. You don't think that that's the way the government should act, do you?
I don't. I'm unfamiliar with the specific circumstances, Senator.
But if you take my scenario for true for the moment, would you think that that's the inappropriate scenario?
Inappropriate. I'm not sure whether it's legal or not. I'm not sure whether the authority for that determination rests with my office or whether Congress would have to address it.
Mr. Axelrod, the president as a candidate promised that he would return the jurisdiction of the export licensing of semi-automatic weapons from the Commerce Department back to the Department of State, for which President Trump took it. And of course, the president can do this by simple regulation without the need for legislative approval. Until that happens, the department is providing no information to Congress as to what lethal weapons, including sniper rifles, assault rifles, and others, are being sold to what countries or foreign persons, in what quantities, and under what conditions. Do you support the president's promise to return jurisdiction to the Department of State? And until that is ultimately implemented, will you commit to provide to the Committee of Jurisdiction over arms sales specific information about what weapon sales are being considered for export?
Thank you, Senator. I don't know enough about the policy issue to have a view on. I know you feel very strongly about it. I just, on the enforcement side, don't have a view on where those authorities should lie. But I will commit to you that for until they are returned to the munitions list, that if confirmed, I would make sure that we enforce aggressively. I also would commit to you,
okay.
Senator.
I don't want to hear about enforcement. I'm asking a simple thing. And, you know, it's amazing. I'm trying to help you guys, but you're not helping yourselves. Information. That's all I want. Not asking you to enforce. I want simple information. I chair the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. We have jurisdiction over arms sales. All I want to know is who the hell you're selling it to. And you can't tell me that? How do you expect me to give you my vote? Okay, explain to me.
Well, Senator, when it comes to information, and apologies for not getting to that part of my answer more quickly, when it comes to information, I do believe it's important, of course, for committees of jurisdiction to get the information they need to fulfill their oversight responsibilities, and I will work with you and with the Department of Commerce, if confirmed, to make sure you have the information necessary to do your job.
Thank you, Senator Menendez. I believe Senator Scott and Tillis are not remote, but okay, then Senator Tester is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you and the ranking member for holding this hearing. I can't speak for any other state, but I got a notion they're in the same boat Montana is. Housing is at a premium. There are businesses that can't expand because of lack of workforce housing. There are startups that can't start up because of lack of workforce housing. And the houses that are there are really expensive because of demand has driven the price way up over the last 18 months. So, Ms. McCargo, how will you address barriers, or can you address barriers in your position to home ownership across the country, but particularly in rural America?
Thank you for the question, Senator Tester. The issues that you are raising in Montana are present all across the country. Home ownership, and I said this in my opening statement, is grossly unaffordable on a nationwide basis. Housing is not only for homeowners but also for renters. Families are paying incredible amounts and are incredibly cost burdened by the cost of their housing. This is an issue that, if confirmed, my role in sort of being able to affect the home price appreciation and the things that are happening is limited. But we are going to be there. Ginnie Mae is there to support millions of families by providing capital, liquidity, and making sure that new rental housing projects that are financed and new homeownership opportunities that require mortgages have the capital that they need. And that is my commitment to being able to ensure that that continues.
Mr. Jemison, you're going to be head of public and Indian housing. In Indian country, at least the large land-based tribes that don't have any gaming, I can speak for them because those are the ones in Montana, and there are other parts of the country too. Poverty is very high. I've said this before, but I always want to get Booker out to Montana so we can compare what urban poverty and rural poverty looks like, and the challenges that exist both places, what the best way for solutions, particularly for housing, because as people have pointed out in this panel already, there are multiple generations living in one house in Indian country. How will you work to make sure that there's more housing availability in Indian country?
Senator, thank you for the chance to answer this question. So one of the things I'm most excited about doing as part of this job, if confirmed, is going to Indian country and engaging in the nation-to-nation consultation that our president's called for, and through that begin to work on a range of the housing issues in Indian country. You know, by way of example, there's the Section 184 loan guarantee program, about which there's been a lot of recent discussion, working to get title so that people can acquire homes that they want to acquire on Indian land. Another example, I mean, I've had a chance to get focused on many of the best practices and great projects that have come out of that nation-to-nation tribal consultation. If I'm confirmed, one of my first actions is going to be to go and begin that discussion, because I think that's the way in all of my work I've been able to help people develop the housing that they need in their community, using the resources available through HUD to make it possible.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about vouchers, and help me understand this, okay? I know some people that have some rental units in a town very close to me that were approached by a bigger company that says it will rent your house for you, and we'll get you more money than you could ever get renting it, than you could ever get with somebody using vouchers. Can you explain to me why that would be, number one, and number two, what you would do about it? Because vouchers are there to help people pay the rent, but if the house isn't available because people can make more money renting it to people who don't have vouchers, it doesn't get us where we need to be. Could you talk about that?
Thank you, Senator, for the chance to answer your question. So to make sure I'm understanding, a person who you're speaking about has said that they could make more money by not renting to voucher holders?
That's correct. Okay. That's correct.
Understood.
Because a bigger rental outfit have come in and say, hey, look, here's the deal. We can make you more money, and go ahead.
So the issue would probably be that fair market rents, or FMRs, in that area are lower than market rents.
Yep.
And that there's maybe been such a rapid appreciation, based on my understanding of your conversation before, such a rapid appreciation in price that the FMRs haven't been adjusted yet.
So I'm out of time, but can you tell me how we fix it? Is it as simple as you fixing the FMRs, or do we have to fix it, or is it something else we have to do?
FMRs need to be adjusted so that they better reflect the market. That there's an annual change system that goes through with that, but I think it's something. It sounds like we need to move more quickly so that we're more responsive to every part of the country in this way.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, the ranking member.
Thank you, Senator Chester. Senator Smith, I believe, is online from her office. She's recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair, Ranking Member, and welcome and congratulations to all of our nominees today. I'm grateful for your willingness to serve our country. I am going to direct my questions today to Mr. Jemison. Thank you so much, sir, for the great conversation we had recently. And I just want to follow up on those conversations. So the first question is about life and safety and fire issues in public housing. As we discussed, on Wednesday morning at 3:56 a.m., in November of 2019. One day before Thanksgiving, Minneapolis firefighters were dispatched to the Cedar high rise, which is a 49-year-old high-rise public housing building. And when they arrived, they found a fire on the 14th floor of that building. The firefighters went to work, they attacked the fire, and they called for backup, but tragically, 5 people were killed before firefighters were able to bring the fire under control. And according to the fire marshal, if the building had been equipped with fire sprinklers, which it was not, those deaths would not have occurred. So I am committed to making sure that this kind of tragedy does not happen again in public housing. HUD estimates that there are 185,000 high-rise public housing units in this country that don't have fire sprinklers. So, Mr. Jemison, if you are confirmed, what will you do to make sure that this kind of tragedy does not happen again? And where does this problem rank, the problem of sprinklers in buildings or lack of sprinklers in high-rise buildings? Where does it rank on your list of priorities to work on in public and Indian housing?
Senator, thank you for the chance to answer this question. And I enjoyed our conversation earlier this week. As I mentioned, one of the things I'm most focused and interested in is working on Indian housing matters. But first and foremost, we are part of a system of ownership and property management all around the country. So in that respect, we're supposed to provide safe, clean, and decent housing. Safe is the first part of that phrase. So making sure that life safety improvements are part of the number one priority in the capital rehabilitation of public housing. We share that passion together. It's got to be number one. Our housing authority leaders are faced often with more than one crisis that they have to address, but life safety has got to be the first one. So what I think you're going to see me focus on is highlighting the critical nature of these improvements, and then ideally, if there are additional resources available to the public housing system, it'll be faster, and we can even accomplish more above and beyond life safety if we have additional resources. So it's going to be my focus, like yours, on life safety improvements as part of the current capital allocations that our housing authorities receive.
Senator Brown and I and many of us on this committee are working hard to make sure that you do have additional resources so that people who are living in public housing have a decent place to live and a safe place to live. And putting fire sprinklers, in my mind, at the top of that list for life safety is urgently important so that the tragedy of what happened at the Cedar High apartments in Minneapolis isn't duplicated in the 185,000 units around the country that also don't have sprinkler systems. So it's crucially important to me. We just have a minute left, and I wanted to just maybe follow up a little bit on Senator Tester's question about the significant challenges of housing in Native communities. And you and I also had a chance to speak about this earlier this week. Could you just tell us a little bit more about how you would approach your leadership of the Office of Native American Programs at HUD and what you will do to familiarize yourselves with the unique housing challenges that Native communities face, especially on tribal land?
Thank you, Senator, for this question. So, as I mentioned when we talked about this, one of my first actions is going to be beginning to engage with through the nation-to-nation consultation process to get understanding of what, because again, each tribe is different and has different challenges. But one challenge I know that you and I have talked about, on which you're particularly focused, is the Section 184 loan guarantee program, and the hindrance, frankly, that's coming out of the administration of that program historically. I'm committed to help you with that. Moving our agency and BIA together to more quickly clear title.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Smith. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of you on your nominations. Mr. Colon, let me start with you. And the question is going to relate to using home grants to increase home ownership opportunities, because as you know, we have a big housing shortage in the country. But you look at the Home Investment Partnership Program, since it began in 1992, $36 billion in home funding that has been spent. $21 billion of that has gone to rental housing activities, while only $9 billion has gone to home buyer activities. And I've heard from lots of community groups in Maryland, including an organization called Build. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Also from Metro IAF. And according to them, there's just not enough funding from home directed to these home ownership purposes. There was a program, and a successful one launched a long time ago, called the Nehemiah Housing Program in Brooklyn. It was successfully implemented in East Baltimore. Can you identify some of the barriers that exist in the current home program that is essentially preventing it from being used for those kind of, I think, creative and successful housing programs?
Thank you, Senator, for the opportunity to address this important issue. I share your concern with the increasing cost of home ownership and home construction. I know that home ownership is an important priority for Secretary Fudge. In my own experience, home has been a critical and very effective program for states and communities. However, I understand the use of home ownership under home has declined over time, as well as the statistics that you mentioned. If confirmed, I commit to working with Congress to identify and address any statutory and working with my team to identify regulatory issues. I do understand that there are some issues with I believe, the pricing and some flexibility issues that I commit to sitting down with my team if and when I'm confirmed, and making those a priority to make sure that home is more flexible and that we can get those home ownership rates up.
I appreciate that. We have to obviously focus on both sides of the equation. We have to increase the supply of homes overall. We also, in my view, need to ensure a supply of choice vouchers, especially focused on families with kids, and give them mobility and wraparound services. But just looking at the home program, it does seem like a disproportionate amount of the funds were used to build the rental properties or help with that piece of the equation, and not enough in terms of providing paths to home ownership for lower income and middle income families. And my understanding is there are these impediments, and hopefully we can address them in a regulatory manner. Ms. McCargo, congratulations on your nomination. I ask you about increasing access to consumer credit in a safe and sound way. In August, Fannie Mae announced that it would launch a new feature in its underwriting system that incorporates consumers' rent payments in the mortgage credit evaluation process. Single-family lenders with permission from mortgage applicants will be able to automatically identify recurring rent payments in the applicant's bank statement data to deliver a more inclusive credit assessment that would also comply with sound safety and soundness requirements. I know you worked at the Urban Institute, and your research focused on reducing racial homeownership gaps, increasing housing affordability, and reducing barriers to accessing credit. I'm asking you about Ginnie Mae, whether you would consider applying this same expanded, more inclusive credit rating approach that Fannie Mae has adopted.
Senator, thank you for that important question. You raised one of the critical barriers to entry into homeownership, which is access to credit and credit history and credit scoring. And that has been part of my past work has really focused on the over 25, 30 million Americans that don't have a credit score at all. Many of them are renters. Many of them have positive rental history, and that is a major barrier to being able to get your first home if you do not have a credit history. So I have studied this issue. I have seen the recommendations that that the GSEs are putting out around rental income as a way to become a homeowner. And I, if confirmed, at Ginnie Mae, while we don't do direct underwriting work, would would work with any program that the FHA, VA, Rural Housing Service, or Indian country, home ownership programs would look at to expand access to credit for more Americans, and Ginnie Mae would be there to support those programs.
I appreciate it. It just seems to me a way to move relatively quickly to expand home ownership opportunities by addressing the credit issue. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Holland. Senator Tillis from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to the nominees before the committee. Mr. Colon, I think it is true, and I think some people have talked about it. I've been watching this from my office, that some people want to change the discussion back to maybe some of the inappropriate tweets of President Trump. I actually publicly criticized some of those tweets, but the American people elected them. And now it almost seems like these are not things that we should consider for any nominees coming before the committee. I was just in a Judiciary Committee hearing this week where one of the nominees 31 years ago made a statement and was roundly criticized by some of my colleagues on my side of the aisle. And I saw that as a statement that this person has twice now before me regretted. That was maybe a lapse of judgment. But the concern that I have with you as a nominee is a pattern of behavior. And quite honestly, it's unprecedented in my 6.5 years being in the Senate. So we frequently hear that retweets do not equal endorsements. What are your thoughts on this?
Senator, I'd like to say thank you for the question. I'd like to start by saying, again, in connection with those tweets, they were wrong in a personal approach that I've never before engaged in. I engaged in for the first and only time in my life. And I've.
Well, how about some of your actual quotes? Those that have to naturally, and if it was not just one, but multiple, have to really express your thoughts and feelings.
I'm sorry, Senator. I didn't understand the question.
Mr. Colon, how many people will work in the organization you're seeking confirmation for?
In HUD?
Yeah.
Sir, thousands?
Mm-hmm. You'd be the administrator of many grant programs run by HUD, and they'd be in blue states, they'd be in purple states, they'd be in red states. You'd be in an organization that has thousands of people who probably run across the political spectrum. So with that in mind, many people who probably voted for Trump probably supported him both times that he ran. Can you explain to me what the acronym PAB or PPAB means?
To be honest, Senator, I do not recall, but I can tell you that...
We got a graphic here if it helps.
Yeah, and thank you. And I just want to say I appreciate your concerns, and I understand completely. But
so
just
coming in as a manager of this organization, again, I've read your letter. I understand you're remorseful. But the fact of the matter is the information's out there, and what Senator Toomey said earlier, some of it's not out there, and we haven't been able to get it from you. We can probably have people go back on Wayback or other platforms and find it. This is what we know. And this is what you were comfortable with saying in what is clearly a public setting. Nobody believes when they go on Twitter it's a private setting, people sitting around cutting up like we all do. This is a pattern of behavior. And you're seeking a management role in an organization where I would have to believe people would say that it would be threatening to know that their boss has, even if you regret the words, the sentiment's the same. Even if the language was cleaner, the sentiment's the same. And it would just lead me to believe it could create a toxic world. How could anybody who has this view, and maybe they were on Twitter and said, I support Donald Trump, how could they have any reasonable expectation that they would be treated fairly under your management?
I can tell you that, Senator, in 13 years of administering some of the largest housing programs in the country, working collaboratively across the aisle with both Republican and Democratic officials in rural, suburban, and urban regions. I'm unaware of a single complaint of partisanship or bias or inappropriate behavior against me or my office. I understand the concerns you're raising. I could only point out that record, and I could only offer my apology and commit to you that if confirmed, I would do. I can tell you that I am 100% committed to working collaboratively, and as I have my entire career in a bipartisan fashion to address the important issues in every state.
Well, Mr. Colon, I just feel like statements that you've made about female anchors on television, this interaction that we'll submit for the record, it just really makes me wonder why you knew this going into it, why you even decided to come forward. I think it raises questions. There are going to be people in an organization you're seeking confirmation for that I believe would have grave concerns. And to the other nominees, I'm going to submit some questions for the record. I know that it doesn't completely swim into your lanes on manufactured housing, a couple of other issues, affordable housing, but we'll get back with you all for questions for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we have two more, yeah, at least. Thank you, Senator Till. Senator Ossoff is recognized for 5 minutes from Georgia from his office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the panelists. Congratulations on your nominations, and thank you for your willingness to serve. Mr. Jemison, I'd like to engage with you on the question of affordable housing. We have an affordable housing crisis in Georgia. Just to illustrate that, there is a shortage of nearly 200,000 affordable housing units in our state. It is a crisis in all of our major metro areas and in rural areas. It is a crisis in Metro Atlanta. It is a crisis in Savannah. It is a crisis in Columbus and Macon and Athens. What I want to ask you, Mr. Jemison, is do you agree that it is vital that we respond to this crisis by making policy that increases the available stock of housing for prospective home buyers and renters? And what policies do you believe that Congress could implement or the executive alone could implement that will increase housing supply, where a shortage of housing in Metro Atlanta, across the state of Georgia, is driving this crisis?
Senator, thank you for the chance to answer this question. I agree that there needs to be significant investment in to create additional affordable housing supply. The role that housing authorities can play in this is very great, and there's current discussion. I mean, I do know that the Build Back Better proposal includes what would be historic and once-in-a-generation investments in affordable housing. In particular, they would address the shortage of affordable housing in all of our communities. The public housing section's role in this is to create affordable housing that serves the very lowest income Americans, and also through vouchers serves a broad range of Americans. We can be part of the supply solution if we have the resources to do it. The resources proposed in the Build Back Better plan have the chance to really help us bring public housing into the 21st century and make it the kind of asset that we all know that it can be and that needs to be to answer the supply questions that you're asking.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jemison. Mr. Jemison, I'd like to secure a commitment from you and Mr. Colon that you will come to the state of Georgia, that you will visit at minimum the city of Atlanta and the city of Savannah and the city of Columbus to meet with local elected officials and leaders and my team to help chart a course, a strategy for increasing the availability of affordable housing in our state, working with federal partners. Mr. Jemison, can you give me that commitment?
Senator, I would make that commitment today to come to Georgia and meet with you and local elected officials, hopefully Housing Authority leadership as well. Creating a strategy with numbers and measurables has been part of my work for 25 years, and I'd love to, along with community engagement, and I'd love to bring that personally to visit with you in Georgia.
Thank you. Mr. Colon, will you head to Georgia, if confirmed, to help map out a strategy to make more affordable housing available to Georgians?
Thank you, Senator. If confirmed, I would be more than glad to come to Georgia and to collaborate with my colleague, Arthur, and to do as much as possible as we could to address the issues in the state of Georgia.
Thank you. Ms. McCargo, in 2007, 2008, GSEs played a significant role in the development of crises in the housing market and in the market for mortgage-backed securities that precipitated the financial crisis. What are the most important lessons learned from that time that you will apply, if confirmed, to this position to ensure that we avoid financial contagion that can emanate from the housing market or the MBS market and threaten financial stability and the broader economy?
Thank you very much for that question, Senator. There are many lessons learned from the prior crisis, and the current pandemic and the current housing crisis that we're in is very different than the last crisis, and many safeguards have been put in place. Many new tools are now available that were not available during the last crisis. Congress moved quickly to put forbearance in place through the CARES Act, which has had a tremendous effect on giving ample time for the industry, servicers, and otherwise to respond to this and to ensure that borrowers stay in their homes who are able to do so and endure this recovery. So I commit to working with you, Senator, if I am confirmed to be the president of Ginnie Mae, to ensure that all the loss mitigation options that are in place are protective and that we are constantly stewarding and making sure that there is safety and soundness in the systems and the underlying risks that exist with Ginnie Mae issuers that are real and important and will be a priority for me. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Ms. McCargo. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Ossoff. I believe that's all the senators who are online or in person. Oh, Senator Cortez Masto is still here. Senator Cortez Masto is recognized from her office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone. Congratulations to the nominees. Let me say this, Mr. Jemison, you're going to be very busy if nominated, because I'm going to invite you to Nevada as well. We have 27 tribes in the state of Nevada, and let me align myself with the questioning from Senators Tester and Smith. My goal has been working with our tribal communities to really improve home ownership for Native Americans. And as you rightfully touched on, unfortunately in Nevada, very few home loans were made with HUD Section 184 loan guarantee program. So I am looking forward to you coming out, that tribal consultation, and working with our tribes and so many others on home ownership. But let me just put something on your radar as well, which is manufactured housing. Native Americans who buy homes on reservation land buy manufactured homes. About 1/3 of new homes on tribal land are manufactured homes, and the Federal Reserve research finds that manufactured home loans are much more likely to be high-cost loans. So, Mr. Jemison, if confirmed, I'm hoping that your office would help us improve the manufactured home market to lower the cost of mortgages for home buyers, especially Native Americans purchasing manufactured homes. Can you commit to that?
Thank you, Senator, for the chance to answer the question. Just to make sure that I'm hearing you properly, the question is, I'm definitely interested in convening the right group of people to address the home loan prices that you're talking about. I'm not certain that the specific loan program that you're talking about is under the control of my section. But one of the things that I enjoy about my work, and I know is true about ONAP, the Office of Native American Programs, is that we often convene and bring together the people that are required to resolve an issue. So I would be very happy to bring together, if it's FHA, if it's my colleague, Ms. McCargo, whatever organizations are required to be brought together to address this issue, I'm going to be there to make sure that it happens. And I would just further say that I have had some experience with manufactured housing and know some of the underlying issues there. And as part of my work at ONAP, I'm excited about being able to address some of them because they're important. They're important to not just tribes, but every part of the country and every kind of American. So I'm particularly excited about working with you on this and convening that group of people.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments, because I couldn't agree more. I am really kind of disappointed at times when individuals just work in their silos and they don't think outside the box in federal government and pull partners together. And so that's what I'm looking for, is that collaboration. When you see an issue, it may not be within your specific jurisdiction, but you reach out to others within federal government to help find solutions to the problems and bring them into the conversation. So thank you for that. That's so important. Ms. McCargo, let me ask you this. Why is it important that the Senate confirm a Ginnie Mae president? I know we have not had a Senate confirmed leader at Ginnie Mae for years.
Thank you for that question, Senator. Ginnie Mae has been without a Senate-confirmed leader since 2017. There's a lot of reasons why this is, Ginnie Mae over this period of time, over the last decade, has grown tremendously in terms of the assets under management and the risks that are present. And there have been, great career staff that have been there, but without a confirmed leader that is really that the Senate has backed. The United States government guarantee that Ginnie Mae offers is one of the most important elements of what Ginnie Mae is and what makes our securities puts them in so much demand across the globe. And so having a leader confirmed by the Senate and backed by the Senate to support the guarantee of the U.S. government, full faith and credit, is absolutely crucial. And I look forward to, if confirmed, having the opportunity to demonstrate that and show the leadership that Ginnie Mae and the security, the stability of the security will have, and what that will mean for the growth of the agency going forward.
Thank you. I appreciate, again, your answers. Let me put another thing on your radar. I know in 2018, Ginnie Mae launched a modernization campaign called Ginnie Mae 2020. It was a 3-year strategic plan to have its data centers running on cutting-edge technology, to realign its counterparty risk management framework, to help bring in additional financing for mortgage servicing rights, and expand its global investor base through outreach and education in dozens of countries across the globe. Can I just, if confirmed, would you continue with the Ginnie Mae 2020 initiative, or would you change it in some way?
Thank you for that question. The Ginnie Mae 2020 initiative, by all accounts, has been very successful. The efforts to modernize the securitization platform are crucial. We need to have state-of-the-art technology that runs this business, and the counterparty risk management work that this team has put in place over the last 5 years, and even very recently in the last 2 to 3 years, is critical and has to be second to none. And so the stress testing, the work that they're doing to make sure that counterparties are safe, these are really important innovations. And a lot of the work from the 2020 plan is still underway, and much of it has been completed, and there is a lot more to do. So I do commit to you that, if confirmed, I would continue to work with the team on modernization of the platform and ensuring that our risk management is sound.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I know with my time, I'll submit the rest of my questions for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cortez Masto. Thank you to the nominees for being here today and providing testimony, a productive discussion of the issues. I hope we can work together as a committee to move forward quickly on the nominations of these 4 very qualified nominees.